We are fast approaching 2 years since the declaration of a state of national disaster by the South African government in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. And during that time, we have seen the decline of the economy and subsequent socio-economic impact on the livelihoods of many South Africans. There were also reports of corruption and maladministration in the hasty procurement of personal protective equipment. We are joined now by SIU Tribunal spokesperson, Mr. Salbi Makhoto, for more on this. Sir, thank you very much for availing yourself this afternoon. So we are made to believe that in these 2 months, in the first 2 months of the hard lockdown in South Africa, taxpayers lost almost 6 billion rand due to corruption and maladministration. You no doubt have your hands full in trying to sift through these cases.
Thank you very much, Sis Dudu. Good afternoon to the viewers. Maybe let me just indicate that I speak for the Special Tribunal. It is not the SIU Special Tribunal, and I will explain that in a moment. But coming back to your question, you are very, very correct. We are here, the Special Tribunal, at the moment, having several applications. I could count up to 45 that have been filed by the Special Investigating Unit to the cumulative value of 2.1 billion rands. And fast forward to today, we have had other applications coming through, and correctly as said in your introductory remarks, the cumulative value thereof financially comes to 6 billion, which told us that in the 2 months of hard lockdown, that was end of March, end of April 2020, taxpayers were pleased an amount of 6 billion through alleged unlawful, irregular, and other unconstitutional means to procure the COVID-19 items to fight back the pandemic.
Please pick up on your thought in terms of just using this as a teaching moment to just give us the difference between the SIU Tribunal and the work that you do.
The SIU and the special tribunals are actually governed by the same act, that is Act 74 of 1996. And that is normally what creates a little bit of confusion, because I even hear legal practitioners and members of the public confusing the SIU and the special tribunal and thinking that this is an SIU court. It is not. The special tribunal is a court on its own, adhering to the Constitution, impartiality, and the fairness of the law, the application thereof. So the Special Tribunal is not in any way involved in investigations. It is the SIU that does that. And based on the finding by the Special Investigating Unit on what they would have found upon the investigation arising out of a presidential proclamation, they would then approach the Special Tribunal to institute civil recovery proceedings. That is where our scope of work in terms of the Act comes in. The civil recovery proceedings is the sole objective of the existence of the Special Tribunal. The Special Tribunal came into operation in 2020, effectively, having been pronounced a year earlier. And to date, we have done quite a lot in terms of the work that has been coming. So there is a very, very thin line there. And I'm happy that discussions have commenced internally in terms of the amendment to the Act, because there are quite a number of areas. As and when we sit in court, we hear the various interpretations to the Act itself. So as we speak, we have commenced the process internally to look into the amendment of the Act and to engage the lawmakers, because, for instance, the issue of jurisdiction of the Special Tribunal, whether it is a fully functional court, often gets confusing to the legal practitioners, and that is going to be clarified even much more clearer as we move into the amendment thereof.
Thank you very much for giving us that clarity. So you make mention in your statement that 18 months, or over the past 18 months, the Special Tribunal has been inundated with urgent preservation orders and review applications to declare invalid the several PPE contracts flagged by the SIU investigations, most of which, you are told, are ongoing. What does that mean?
As you will recall, the SIU head Advocate Mutibi did hint in the report that was publicly released a fortnight ago to the president, that was made public. And as you look at the number of matters that are in that report and that ultimately have to be instituted before the special tribunal, you could tell that there is still a lot of work that lies ahead. Much as we need to understand this, as you do that, the special tribunal was, at the time of creation, there was no hint whatsoever that there was going to be COVID. We were busy with the civil recovery proceedings in quite a number of matters, and these matters of COVID corruption have added another workload on our side. But however, we are ready for that. So what I was indicating in the opinion article that was published this morning was to the effect that 18 months since the special tribunal came into operation, we have had to grant about 36 preservation orders that are primarily to freeze the account of the implicated and other service providers and or contractors who have allegedly have had their fingers in the till. But more importantly, of late, there is an order that was granted last week by the Special Tribunal in the matter of the SIU versus the MEC for Provincial Treasury in the Free State Province. A particular call is made in that order to the effect that it is time that we also look deeper as the law enforcement body, as the court, that we look into the involvement of the public servants, because this alleged irregularities happened at the time when there were no people. It was hard locked down. But out of that, we realized that there were so many things that happened underneath the tables that are now coming out in the open. And the order specifically directs the accounting officers, colloquially referred to as the heads of department, to start looking deeper into the provisions of the Public Finance Management Act, especially Section 38 thereof, which gives very, very clear powers on the accounting officers to do or to act in a particular manner when it comes to the preservation of public funds. And that is not only the case. We have had that in the Digital Vibes, much as I cannot go deeper into the Digital Vibes story because it still has to come before court. But based on the affidavits that have been filed before the Special Tribunal and in many other matters relating to COVID-19, you could immediately pick up that there are public officials that are involved, and the focal point should not move to the service providers. Those who authorized this alleged irregular transactions also need to be taken on board, and they also need to repay where there is such a finding. That was the gist of what actually my opinion was talking about this morning.
I'd like us to expand on that last point, the recouping of these funds. I think a lot of people are looking forward to that. Yes, this has taken place. Yes, we are aware of some billions of rand taxpayers' monies that have been lost due to this corruption. How do we get it back?
There are quite a number of mechanisms to get it back, but as a special tribunal, if you look into our record over the past 18 months that I've referred to, there are preservation orders. And there is even another terrain wherein we looked into about those implicated officials who allegedly either resigned trying to escape liability or resigned for whatever reason. So there are orders that have been issued or granted, ordering them that the government employee pension fund needs to preserve those funds until the civil recovery proceedings have been concluded. So to cut the long story short, what the legal posture has been was that where there is an implication to the Constitution, to the regulatory framework, or to any other statutory provision governing public procurement, the repercussions should not only be to the department, because the department can be very big, but there are individuals concerned who sit in the bid adjudication, in the various bodies or forums, where in this procurement decisions are being made. At the Special Tribunal at the moment, for instance, one of the matters that we have that has dragged on for a while is the PPE procurement in the Department of Health in Gauteng. And the affidavits and the evidence that has been submitted thus far, which still has to be tested, is to the effect that there are officials who have been involved, you'll recall the case of the former chief financial officer, the former chief director for supply chain management. And this is the trend that we see even in other matters that are before us. When we are adjudicating on the matter of the public works in the Beit Bridge border post, the involvement of the public officials shows clearly the disregard and the contravention pertaining to Section 38 of the PFMA. That is where the legal question comes in as to whether there is any particular adherence or there is just a deliberate and or negligent disregard.
I wonder if you are able to, while we appreciate that investigations are ongoing, but I wonder if you are able to tell us about a matter that will be argued on the 8th of March. The unit arguing that it discovered that an estimated amount of 5 million rand had been left out of an initial investigation concerning a former top government official.
What is happening is that you are talking about the digital vibes matter, where the application before the special tribunal is to review and set aside the 150 million contract by the Department of Health. There are quite a number of respondents in that application, and as we speak, an amount of 22.4 million has been preserved pending the institution and finalization subsequently of the review proceedings. But now the SIU had made an application to supplement their papers in the form of a joinder application, because as they did indicate, part of the reason why they were granted the preservation order was because they told the special tribunal that their investigations were ongoing, and should it come to a point where the certain allegations need to be followed up, that will be the case. And indeed, when the matter went further, apparently they did discover something that they approached the special tribunal to join in the former minister's wife, amongst others, and other service providers who are alleged to have been involved in the tender process. And as such, on the 8th, that they will be argued, the joinder application will be argued. That is not yet the main application. This is an interlocutory application that will give an indication as to how the special tribunal will approach the main application. So on the 8th of March, it is a joint application, it's an interlocutory application which needs to be disposed of before we get into the main application in as far as the matter of the digital vibes is concerned.
You speak of millions being preserved. What does it mean when monies are preserved?
The meaning of the monies being preserved is that this is an interim interdictory order. What happens is that based on the evidence, it is not a decision of the special tribunal to say now we are granting this preservation order. It has to be pursued in the form of evidence. So the evidence normally in the cases that have been submitted or that the cases that have been heard is that there is a prima facie evidence of wrongdoing, which still needs to be tested, and that will remain an allegation. And once the allegation is clarified in the form of a finding, then the funds that have been preserved or frozen would then be released to based on what the finding at that point would be. So the long and short of it is that preservation primarily means freezing of the money or the assets or whatever needs to be preserved, so that when the time for the actual recovery takes place, there is some money to be repaid, if ever that is the finding.
Thank you very much, sir, for joining us this afternoon. Mr. Selby Makgoto is SIU Special Tribunal spokesperson.